Welcome to All Creatives Now, a brand new one-stop creativity spot where you can find all the information and resources you need to unleash your creative potential.
Looking at the growth in the creator economy and facilitating conversations amongst creatives about what it is to be a creator in the modern world.
Join me, Paul Stephenson,
and me, Kev Harrison,
as we interview creatives from a range of disciplines about their journeys, their passions, their struggles, and what it means to them to be a creative in the modern world. There has quite literally never been a better time to be a creative.
Get your work out there into the world.
Hi, and welcome to All Creatives Now, the podcast about creativity with conversations with creatives. My name is Paul Stephenson, and I am joined as ever by my wonderful co-host, Kev Harrison. Say hi, Kev.
Hello there. How are you doing?
Yeah, very good, thank you. How are you today?
I'm all right. Yeah, I'm excited to get things going with this podcast. It's been a bit of a while in the genesis, so yeah, I'm excited to get here and do episode 1.
Yeah, like most creative things, it's kind of one of those things that's really good in the abstract, and you sort of, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and then you're going to do this, and then you actually have to sit and plan it and do it and do the doing, and the doing is the is a bit like the making of sausages, and not necessarily the fun bit. But here we are making an episode.
Yes.
We have our camera switched on, we have our microphone switched on, and we have our logo in the corner of the screen. So it must all be going okay. So so basically the aim of this podcast is going to be to have conversations with our fellow creatives about creativity and about the creator economy, and the way that the modern technologies and modern world has sort of facilitated so many more people to be creatives and to follow their dreams these days. So before we get into all of that, though, I thought it'd probably be a good idea to give a little bit of background about ourselves and why we're talking to you, the audience, about this. So first of all, obviously, I'll throw over to Kev. So Kev, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you do it, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a Brit, like yourself. I grew up in a nightmarish hellscape on the edge of London called Woking. But once I escaped there, I lived all over the UK. I've lived in a few places around Europe as well, like Turkey, Poland, and now Portugal, where I'm pretty much permanent. I am a teacher by day, and that in itself is quite a creative profession, or should be, I think, in its best form anyway. And my main creative pursuit is writing. So I'm a writer of mainly fiction, generally in the darker sort of genres, and I've written I've written prose for books, for short stories for anthologies and magazines, but also for podcasts. So I'm very keen on the audio format as a medium as well. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be here on this show to kind of find out about how creativity is working for people in very, very different creative industries, and to see what lessons we can kind of pick out from there. So what about you, Paul? What's your creative background?
So so like you, I'm a writer of predominantly dark and scary stuff. My creative journey. So I'm also like you, English, and a long time ago, I was at a disgustingly privileged boarding school as a child, and had one of those teachers, one of those really nice ones who actually cares, much like I imagine you probably do as well, Kev. But I had a teacher who kind of saw in me someone who liked to read but was not being challenged by the stuff that was being set and what have you. And he handed me a John Wyndham book called Day of the Triffids, which, bear in mind, I was maybe 9 at the time. The next book he gave me was a Stephen King book, and everything kind of snowballed from there. So I guess I've always kind of wanted the idea of being a creative. So I wrote my first short story when I was maybe 12. Then, I was very much into being a band and all those sorts of different things. But now, sort of, as I get older, I've kind of settled very much into the more novel writing mold. So I'm an indie published author, which means I do it all myself. So depending on which way you look at it, that's either a really cool thing or a very evil thing. And I guess we'll get into those conversations further down the line.
Yes.
Um, but I have a trilogy called Blood on the Motorway, which is post-apocalyptic horror, and I have an ongoing ebook sci-fi horror serial called The Sunset Chronicles.
Mm.
Uh, and then I'm also in the process at the moment of setting up a podcast. So, like you, I really enjoy the audio format for fiction, and see both of us have written for a podcast called The Other Stories, which
Which is
uh,
magnificent.
spoiler alert, quite a big fan of the Other Stories podcast.
You're very right.
And yeah, so we've both written for that, and it's kind of inspired me to start my own. So by the time this comes out, you should be able to see the trailer for Bleakwood, which is a new horror podcast coming soon as well. So yeah, pretty busy bee, but it's all just trying to get as much creative stuff out there into the world as possible, really.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you are a busy bee, absolutely. That's without even going into the visual arts side of things, which perhaps we'll touch on a bit later.
Yep, yeah, you have to come back to that. Yeah, the truth of the matter is I just like someone. I'm someone who likes to do stuff myself. Yeah, I don't like kind of waiting for other people to do things and whatever. So I kind of ended up, and also, I like bootstrapping. I like sort of trying to get as much done in house as possible. So yeah, I've kind of taught myself a few creative skills over the years that yeah have stood me in pretty good stead. So yeah, so as well as obviously all the writing and stuff that you do, though, you also write for This Is Horror as well. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I've actually known Michael David Wilson, who's the editor in chief and managing director of This Is Horror. I've known him for many, many years, about 15 years now. Um, and we actually got to know each other through the heavy metal scene around Birmingham in the mid 2000s. Yeah, mid 2000s. And I mean, we both had an interest in horror at the time. Obviously, we didn't really talk about that so much when we first met, but when as we got to know each other, I learned more about his passion for horror, which obviously matched my own in some senses, probably exceeded my own, to be honest, because he's like a fanatic. Um, but then when I started writing, he gave me the opportunity to take over their news and must-reads kind of articles. I've done some reviews for them as well, but it's just finding time is so difficult on that side. So Bob Pastorella, the co-host of and the website manager of This Is Horror, I've kind of told him I've had to back away from that side of things just because I just don't have as much time as I'd like to dedicate to that side of things. But yeah, one of the really big benefits of doing that stuff for This Is Horror is that I've got to know a lot of indie horror authors who perhaps I probably wouldn't otherwise have done. Um, because people send me their press releases, their cover art, and that sort of thing to include in sort of like the new releases roundup kind of thing. So yeah, that's something that I really enjoy because it's helping to get other indie authors' work out there with a pretty big platform. This is horror is a fairly huge place for horror news and for the horror world generally, especially literature. So having that opportunity to kind of share their work with the world and give them a bit of a platform is like a really, really positive thing for me as well. So I really enjoy that, and also get the scoop on stuff that's coming out that I wasn't aware of. And often some of this stuff is terrific material that I wouldn't otherwise perhaps have found.
Yeah, they're definitely doing the Dark Lord's good work.
Mm.
This is horror, so
Yeah,
big
great
shout
job.
out to them.
Mm.
So yeah, so well, that's a little bit of background about us. So you haven't done what you should do, Kev, which is to tell everyone about the books of yours that they can go and buy right now.
Oh
So
bloody hell! Yes,
yeah,
good
go on.
shout.
Yeah, good marketing brain there. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Below and Past Best Untrodden and your many various works.
Yeah, so I've got a short story collection that came out last year, last June, called Paths Best Left Untrodden, and that is like 13 stories of dark stuff. Each one with story notes, which I really like giving that. I don't know if all readers appreciate it. I know some do. I know when I'm reading a short story collection, I love seeing the notes, these little snippets of inspiration. So for me, that was something that I really wanted to include. There is also Below, which is a novella of subterranean horror, but that actually is in the process of finding a new home because of the publisher having a meltdown, which we might again come to at some later stage in the podcast's future trajectory. I've also got a novella called The Balance, which came out 2 years ago this month. Um, done really well for me. Lots and lots of people have really enjoyed that and spoken about it online and so on and so forth, which has helped it to kind of gain momentum. And I'm still really really proud of that work. And I've got a short novel, long novella, which is based in the Middle East called Shadow of the Hidden, which I am shopping to various publishers at the moment. So fingers crossed, I'll have news about that later. Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously, if you are a publisher of dark horror and you haven't been sent that yet, then do reach out to Kev.
Yeah, give me a bell. Absolutely.
Okay, well, we probably better get into the whys and wherefores of all creatives now.
Yeah, what are we doing here?
Yeah. What is it? What is the point of all this?
Yeah.
Which is maybe a question we should have thought of first. But yeah, no, you and I have been in conversations with this for a couple of months now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
So I know we've both been interviewed by our good friend Luke Condor for his Luke's Massive Storytelling
I've
Thing
not been interviewed by Luke
podcast.
Condor
Have
actually,
you
but that's
not?
okay. No,
I
no,
thought
no.
you had. I heard you being
But
interviewed on
maybe in the
something.
future.
Yeah. Oh well,
I've
obviously
been on a
that's an
few. I
oversight
did a
by
few
Luke.
podcasts last year with some when Below came out initially. I
Yeah.
did quite a few podcasts then, so you probably heard me prattling on in various fora.
Well, I remember. I remember hearing you on an interview, and obviously we're friends anyway through the Hawk and Cleaver and the other stories lot. But I
Mm.
heard an interview where you were talking very much about how you'd sort of moved abroad, but also um, jacking in a job off the back of reading a book. Was it called Shit Jobs?
Uh,
And
in fact, no, it wasn't that book that made me do it. In fact, I read that book later. That book is called Bullshit Jobs. It's brilliant. It kind of explains how most of the jobs that exist in the office sector are sort of invented just to keep the money flowing around into the pockets of people who are quite vacuous and annoying. But no, the book that actually made me quit my job was a book called Dance, Dance, Dance by Haruki Murakami. So it's a fiction book. And it had this wonderful analogy for what I used to do, which was like I was a data analyst. The guy in the book wasn't a data analyst, but it made a lot of sense to me. He talks about his job as being like shoveling snow in a blizzard. So like you shovel, there's more snow. You shovel, there's more snow. Nothing ever changes, and it's just this immensely dissatisfying kind of experience that I think a lot of people relate to. And I think it's why we're seeing a lot of people who are working in those kind of unsatisfying sectors, like looking at potentially career change, but also if they haven't got the financial situation to enable that career change, then maybe instead they're looking at like how can I make my free time into something that enables me to be creative, to enables me to do something which will satisfy me on a deeper level, which will allow me to express myself, which will allow me to be, the individual that I am, rather than kind of just number crunching or whatever it is that isn't driving them.
yeah, and I think we've all seen in the kind of the COVID era, everyone working from home and the development of tools and things that can help people to just exist more on their own and I mean, for instance, if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, and if you're not, if you're listening to the podcast, we do have a snazzy YouTube channel where you can come and actually see our faces. And if you're on the YouTube channel and you don't want to see our snazzy faces, there is a nice audio podcast version available for you as well. Um, but we've got snazzy backgrounds and idents and stuff like that, and there is no way on earth we're two writers basically. We just make up stories and type them down. So there'd be no way 10 years ago that we could have put together a show like this and made it look half decent and got the audio right and all that sort of thing. And there are just so many tools these days to allow creatives to to fulfill their potential and not have to worry so much about necessarily the technical sides of things and what have you. So many distribution methods out there now for getting your work out into the world, and it has seen the rise of what is come to be known as the creator economy. Um, Obviously, as authors, we we've been witness to a huge chunk of that, which is the birth and the advent of ebooks and self publishing. Um, I know for me, I was toiling away writing a novel, and I'd been writing it for about 8 years. At the point, as so many people do with their first novels, just tinkering and tinkering and tinkering and tinkering until it no longer resembled anything even remotely close to what it started with. Um, and then I heard when I was first getting into podcasts, I heard a podcast called the Self Publishing Show. Oh no, Self Publishing Podcast with Johnny, Sean, and Dave, and they were talking all about how basically the three of them had quit their jobs, and they were just publishing their own work through Kindle, the Amazon store, and Smashwords, and they were making a decent living, and they weren't going through an agent, they weren't going through a traditional publisher, and just the idea of it just completely and utterly blew my mind. And within 2 years, that novel was finished and out there, and been out there for over 5 years now. So yeah, and I think more and more people are kind of waking up to that. And as you say, a lot of people are jacking in what they're doing and starting completely new creative careers. But then there's a lot of people like myself who I don't earn the money that I need to do that from the creative stuff alone. So I do
And you
still
have
have
family
the
responsibilities and so on as well. That's
yeah,
the other thing, isn't it? It
exactly.
depends on your life situation. Yeah.
Yeah, it turns out kids are expensive,
Oh,
and
God damn it.
yeah, and also
Shame you
I
can't send them up the chimney like in the past, but
well,
oh well.
exactly. Yeah, to be honest, if I set my children up a chimney, the chimney would be dirtier at the end of it than it was at the beginning. So yeah, but I I still live. Not all of us have been able to move away to Portugal, where the sun is shining and the rents are low. I'm here in slate grey Britain with rain pattering at my door and a mortgage that is probably about 70 times higher than what my parents probably would have paid.
Absolutely.
So it's all about the reason we wanted to do this show was really just to talk around, the way that the world is changing for creatives, and the creative economy. Um, but also, when we spoke to each other about it, we thought what would be really interesting is to talk across disciplines, as you like, so, you and me are both writers, but, I got a lot recently from listening to a podcast called Creative Pep Talk, which is
Mm.
a guy called Andy J. Pizza. He's an illustrator. And I'm not an illustrator. I'm not an artist at all in that kind of regard. I do some graphic design stuff for my covers and for other people, but I wouldn't necessarily consider myself an artist in that way. I don't create you know illustrations or anything like that or paint.
Sure. Yeah.
But I learned a lot from that. So it kind of got me thinking that it'd be really interesting to talk to musicians and artists and creatives of all stripes. You've people people can lump creatives in as just being like, oh, you're a musician, you're a creative, you're a writer, creative. But there's so many different types of creativity out there. As you say, being a teacher is being a creative.
Mm.
Um, you look at if you look at something like This Is Horror, or some of the really big review blogs that are out there. One of the biggest people in the horror scene at the moment is a woman called Sadie Hartman who runs Mother Horror, which is essentially
Yeah. And I don't think
reviews.
anyone could tell anyone that she isn't a creative. Like, that's
Exactly,
impossible.
exactly. You look at what she does, and you look at what's being done visually on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. There's so many different avenues to creativity now.
Yeah.
And
And I
so
think the thing is, like by doing this podcast, I think we have a really big opportunity to, to speak to comedians, to speak to musicians, to speak to whoever, and say, what are the what are the tricks, what are the tools, what are the hooks that these people are using that maybe we haven't leveraged yet, and vice versa. Like what hooks maybe from writing can these people pick up, as we have these conversations, which I think we're going to aim for a conversation which is relatively organic. Um, what are the crossover points that we can uh, make best use of, and they can make best use of to kind of help us all on this creative journey and to understand the creator economy better and to find our place in it that bit more effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. And as well as that, it's just nice to talk to people across different stripes and kind of
Totally.
learn new things. And yeah, so uh, the way that we've planned to do this, and we won't talk about what guests we've got lined up yet, because I'm sure we'll find out that guests can fall in and out of the rota and what have you. We've got some
Absolutely.
really interesting people lined up across, as you say. We've got some stand-up comedians, we've got some other writers, we've got some artists. We've got musicians. So there's going to be a range of different people that we're talking to. But what we were sort of planning to do is kind of separate this into sort of seasons, where we'll talk to a few people along, a kind of theme. So first off, we're going to have a few guests who we're going to really just be talking about, the state of the creator economy right now. But then we've also got, we're going to probably delve into, things around mental health and creativity, and
Yeah.
um, you know, uh, there's a range of different things that we can look at. And yeah, so we'll probably break it into seasons where we'll interview a bunch of people, and then maybe Kevin and I will jump back in and at the end of the season and kind of offer some last thoughts on what we've learned across talking to those people.
Try and
Um,
crystallize for the layman all the things that the smart people have told us.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, invite smart people in, listen to them, and then pass off their opinions as our own. That's
Hurrah!
entirely the plan. Um, so yeah, so we do hope you will join us on the journey.
Mm.
So if you are going to, then as they say, like and subscribe. And as we go along, we'll be adding some more different various elements to this. But as well as the podcast slash YouTube show, we also will be. We've got a website, which is very snappily called allcreativesnow.com. And we'll be doing some writing around there, around some of the things that you know we've been thinking about, and some of the thoughts that we've been having.
In
So
fact, I believe some of those things are available now at the time of going to air, are they not?
indeed, yeah. So for instance, first of all we've got a big introduction post which goes into a little bit more about what we've been talking today. But given that I had three chances to edit it, it probably says it more eloquently than I have here. But that's the advantage of the written word. We've also got a bit of background about what the creator economy is, where the roots of the term come from, and some of the big sort of big points in the history of that. So that's quite an interesting read. But then we've also got Kev. You've written a piece about whether or not the role of your age within creativity. So
Yeah,
perhaps
this
you
is
want to just
something I spoke about recently with a few different creatives, a few different writers actually in different forums, and it was something that really interested me because I am in my early 40s, and I think that is a kind of time in your life where you start to think about like what are my priorities, and I think that's probably sharpened my focus somewhat at what I want to achieve creatively, like where I want to go next, and what next steps might be after that as well. And so I started to think about like, have I missed the boat in some sense, by not starting off like some of my peers, some people that I know quite well who've started off, writing in a very much more serious fashion, sort of in their 20s when I was still, screaming in a death metal band, and whether I have missed the boat. And so that article kind of goes into like what are some of the pros and cons of creating at that young age, with that youthful exuberance, but also, like what can an older, wiser, in inverted commas, head
more heavily bearded.
provide? More heavily bearded head, exactly. What can that present? That'll be especially useful to the female listeners.
Yeah.
Um, and I've also done another piece looking at the benefits of meditation or mindfulness to the creative process, and how we might be able to harness like some of our own daily sort of routine activities to achieve that if classic meditation is not something that works for you, which is very much the case for me. So that they're hopefully going to be interesting for readers, and obviously we're going to be picking up we're going to be aiming for a couple of articles every couple of weeks, isn't that right? Like that's going to be our general approach, sort of 2 or 3
That
articles every 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we'll probably do is we'll aim to keep that pretty regular. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram. Probably Twitter's probably going to be the place where we're most active.
Yeah.
But you can find us on all the social medias of your choice, including the one that's poisoning the brains of the population right now. So we'll be there on Facebook. Trying not to call it Meta. And yeah, so uh, yeah, there are a couple of articles a week. In all probability, we've got some interesting stuff coming up on there. And yeah, so keep an eye on that as well as on the podcast. So we'll
And another
probably
thing I
aim.
wanted to mention, actually, with the
Mm,
website before, sorry to cut in there, man, is the community aspect, because I think this was something that really appealed to me enormously when we first talked about how we were going to approach this. You know, the idea of like our guests kind of becoming part of the All Creatives Now family, and you know, it not being like, come on, promote your album, book, whatever, give us some wisdom and then disappear. We're actually really going to be looking to, to have that section on the website where people could say, oh, you know, back in episode 2 of season 1, I listened to this conversation with this person. But you know, we're 2 years down the line. Can I find out what they're doing now? And the answer is really going to be definitively yes, you can. And we're going to encourage them to, keep us abreast of what they're doing so that we can put that information out there, and like I say, try and maintain this as a community, so because we're all in it together. I mean, I very much this is probably something we'll discuss at a later date, but I very much am a believer in the idea that the rising tide lifts all boats. Like I don't feel like as creatives we're in competition with each other. I feel like as creatives we are trying to foster an environment in which people more generally enjoy and spend their free cash, if they have enough kicking around, on our creative projects. And that doesn't matter to me whether they're picking up my book or your book. If they read a good piece of dark fiction, then my view is that they're going to want more of that. And so, like I say, I don't believe we're in competition, and that goes for the music, that goes for the comedy, that goes for the art. I think having that community aspect is something that really appeals to me about this whole project.
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we'll be keeping track of where people go. We'll be having links to all of their stuff on our website, and as you
Not in a
say, we'll be
stalkery way.
no. Well, yeah, we'll try not to be.
You were in Lidl
And
on Wednesday, weren't you?
yeah, well, do you know what the was? God. Um, no, but also, we're going to try and sort of maintain a kind of a good sort of repository of interesting tools for creatives. So one of the articles that we've got coming up will either be live now or very shortly is about the learning platform Skillshare, which is something I'm a really big fan of. Um, I taught myself how to use Photoshop and a few of the Adobe suite through there, and through some really good courses on there. So we'll have an article on how to use that, but also some of the best courses on there. But then, when people are coming on and they're talking about a book that's inspired them or what have you, um, we'll make sure to link to that as well, both in the show notes for the show,
Yeah,
but also um, in the in the actual store itself. So we'll have a kind of a store there, which is not really a store, so you're not buying anything. It just links out to the other things. So Kev's mentioned a
yeah,
couple of books there today, so we'll make sure that they get covered off. So they should be there for you to look at.
certainly.
So yeah, so the idea is for this to be a real sort of one-stop shop for creatives, really. So because we are all in this together as to a certain extent. If you're in the UK, then every creative's getting squeezed by the government right now. So, and if you're anywhere in the world, then you're probably facing the same sort of problems as people in your field or across the. So yeah, so make sure to check that out. So that's allcreativesnow.com. Just a note on sort of inclusivity. So we might not have transcripts immediately available for harder hearing folks, but we'll make sure that the YouTube channel is captioned.
Mm.
So that'll be available if you are hard of hearing. And if there's, if we're doing anything and we're missing out something that you'd like to see, drop us a line on Twitter or leave a comment on the show notes, and we'll try and make sure that this is a welcoming place for everyone. That's
Definitely.
our real aim with this. So whatever your stripes, whatever your community, whatever your type of creativity, we want you to feel at home here.
Mm.
And if you've got any suggestions for who you'd like to see on the show, obviously let us know that as well. Um, as things move forward, we might start looking at sort of trying to branch that community out with I don't know, a Patreon or a Discord channel or something like that. But for the moment, we're just trying to grease the wheels and get it moving. So
Exactly.
so one step at a time.
Mm.
So I think that gives you a bit of a flavour of what we're doing and who we are. So Kev, do you want to tell everyone where they can find you online?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on Twitter with the rather cumbersome handle of Lisboeta Inglês, which means English person in Lisbon, which is not very helpful because it's in Portuguese. But if you search for Kev Harrison, it's always Kev. No one calls me Kevin apart from my mum and maybe the police if I were to ever be accosted by them. Hopefully not. So yeah, if you search for Kev Harrison, you can generally find me with ease. I'm also at my website, which is kevharrisonfiction.com. But yeah, if you Google me, then I tend to pop up fairly rapidly. What about you, Paul?
So I am pretty much everywhere as PRS Books on socials. So that's me on Twitter and Instagram, and Facebook is Paul Stephenson Books. My website is paulstevensonbooks.com. And you can find my ebooks and print books in your favorite store. And if you head over to my website, you can actually pick up the first in each of my series for free in ebook form. So go and check those out if you are a fan of horror, dark fiction, or anything of that nature. Um, as for All Creatives Now, well, you've already found us, so well done there. But our Twitter is All Creatives Now, and our Instagram is All Creatives Now, and our Facebook is unsurprisingly All Creatives Now. And you can find us on allcreativesnow.com. The podcast is a production of Hollowstone Press, which you can find more details at hollowstonepress.com. But in the meantime, thank you very much for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy the show moving forward.
Yes, thank you very much for your listenership or viewership. And yeah, please do join us. And please do, as Paul mentioned earlier, get involved with the conversation. I'm going to be putting out some polls on the Twitter platform and that kind of thing. And that is very much a call to action to hear from you. As Paul already mentioned, if you've got ideas, if you've got people you'd like us to be speaking to or you think are important to the conversations we're having, then do mention those. But also give us your opinion, give us your experiences, because the more a community angled project this can be, I think the more we're going to get out of it, and the more hopefully all of you are going to get out of it as well. So I look forward to hearing from everybody taking this forward.
Great. Okay. Well, cheers, Kev, and we'll be back in the next couple of weeks with the first proper episode with an actual guest. So speak to you all soon.
Looking forward to talking to you. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.